Hey everyone, so here it is, the video where I'm going to respond to a lot of the things being said about me right now. Let me preface this by saying I think I messed up a lot by doing everything improvised last time. So this time I wrote out my feelings. They are my own, but yeah, I'm going to be using my teleprompter to make sure I don't go off on tangents or prove once again that, to be honest, turns out I can be a moron. Regarding the criticisms I've received, some of the things I actually do agree with. Took me a while to get there, but yeah, I'm there. I believe there are things I did wrong, but there are also narratives about me being pushed out there that aren't just wrong, they are really, really hurtful. So I just want to ask you this. If you are one of the people who has been so mad and really wanting me to admit to times I was wrong, you're going to get to see some of that. But I also want you to be open to the idea that you might have been wrong about some things too, as you watch. As everything goes, there is always context and nuance that you can't know, and I hope that you'll hear me out. The first thing I want to share is going to be very vulnerable, and I know that there are going to be some video responses, I'm sure, made to me that are saying I'm being manipulative by starting here. I don't think that's true. It is what feels like the most absolutely pressing thing to start with, what's going on in my life. So I need to start right here with an admission. I am not as strong a person as I thought I was. I thought I had a super hard exterior and interior, and that when I'm right, all I need is to be right, and then anything else won't be able to hurt me. And that, it turns out, is not the case. While I have tried to put on a mostly strong face, this has been the darkest time in my life in years. I have retreated into behaviors that are harmful, and I am desperate to get back to some level of normalcy and to be able to focus on the things that matter the most to me. The thing is that it is a constant negativity, anger, but yes, in some cases, and even many cases, just people expressing that the nicest form would be like, I'm not who they thought I was. And that, turns out, hurts a lot to hear. So to the point that I've considered quitting a few times, but I don't actually know what else I would do at this point. And I definitely can't turn my back on my business and my staff. So I'm going to try to tell you and respond to as much as I can here. And when I'm done, I need to be done with this for a while. And I'm really hoping by covering enough, I can be. It honestly doesn't feel like hyperbole right now to tell you that this is killing me. Because the dark places I've gone, very, very dark places. All I honestly want is to help people and make people's lives better, and I've been failing to do that lately. But also lately, people have come for every aspect of my life except for my dog. And now that I've mentioned it, Dexter might be next. So if when you hear me out, you still think I'm awful, then I will be sad to see you go, but I'm going to put everything on the table. I'm going to be honest, and I hope for the most part, I've recovered at least some understanding from people, even if you still don't agree with me. Let me list out real quick everything I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to start off by talking about why I turned off comments on the original Gabbie Hanna Rachel Oates video, and why, since turning off comments, we've also blocked people trying to comment other places, and anyone just really trying to force me to talk about it. It's important for me to also talk about my social philosophy. It's going to be important for everything else, but I'm going to try to keep it short. During that, I'm also going to talk about why I've taken so much time to address things. I'm also going to talk about the accusations that I am using my autism as a shield. I will also generally talk about the way I engage with fans. This will mean covering how I formed friendships with people who liked my channel before we met. Also talk about how I've engaged with people in antagonistic ways and who either didn't like me or my channel, or in cases, just my recent actions. It's come up a little recently, so I will also talk about my views on dating people who knew my channel before me, and how my views on that have changed over time. Then I'm going to address accusations that, and forgive me, content warning, we will be using the R word quite a few times in this, what do you even call this episode? We'll be addressing accusations that I'm a rape apologist. Then I'm going to address the narrative that I picked Gabbie Hanna over Rachel Oates, which is probably the most popular thing that is lobbed at me right now. I'll also further address my friendship with Gabbie Hanna. I'm going to address accusations that I support or condone the actions of a rape apologist. I will also address accusations that I silence sexual assault survivors and people from other groups. And Jesus, as I list all these out loud, like so many things to address. I probably should have. Then I'm also going to hit some other general things from outside of this situation. First, I'm going to address people who are mad that I abandoned Dear Mr. Atheist for the Sometime Show. This in the part after the whole Gabbie stuff. I'll also address that people feel like I've tried to guilt people into watching the Sometime Show. There's an accusation out there that I threatened my audience, that I would quit if they didn't watch. I'll talk about that. And people have said that I am a hypocrite for crapping on drama channels when I've talked about people like Rachel Oates and many other creators. People also wish I would shut up about numbers. Stop talking about channel numbers. I've also been called a narcissist who has manipulated my therapist, which is a rough one to hear. I'm going to hit that one and probably some more that come to mind as I put my thoughts together. All right, so let me start here. I absolutely think I did things wrong, but I'm also resentful of a lot of conspiracies and jumps to conclusions that people have come up with. I'm not going to address all of them. I honestly couldn't if I wanted to. There's too many now. But if you are one of the people who started creating conspiracies about my personal life or about my current relationship especially, I'm actually not trying to save you as a subscriber at all, and you can go. The rage I felt seeing those kinds of things and how it hurt my partner also. Yeah, if my problem here is that I can't humble myself enough to get over that, then I'm just going to accept that that's a character flaw of mine because I straight up have contempt for the things that I had to read. Regarding saving anyone else as a subscriber, I don't think that's why I'm doing this time. Obviously, I think I pretty much said so, that I was trying something like that the first time. I thought by sharing and being open, it would stop the narratives going around. And as I said in the video, I was motivated to try and protect my business. But this time is not that. This time, I am motivated by the fact that many people have adopted in their mind a character of me that isn't me. And some of that is my fault, but some of it is also not. Some of it has come from creators who are motivated by the views they get when talking about me and by telling people how to feel about me. But some of it's also been because I've sort of been a dick. The knowledge that I have worked so hard to be a better person and be an activist and be an advocate and to have all of that, all of it washed away over something that felt like a totally personal matter. To put lightly, I'm not doing okay right now. But there have been plenty of people who have basically said, don't try to defend yourself, just admit you were wrong. And here you're going to see basically a mix of both. I'm going to be talking about both. I'm not going to lie about my intentions or actions to appease people who are mad in regards to where I think a popular sentiment is wrong. If that's what I think happened, I'm going to say so. I've been fighting against popular sentiments my entire channel. Like, what do you think it's like to fight with Christians? All right, let's get into the weeds. I know this was a long intro. Last thing I'll say is please watch the whole video. Please, especially if you feel a certain way because of some other video you watched covering it or something, please actually hear my own words. I'm going to mention this first because I know it's probably going to come up anyway. Yeah, I'm going to leave this video monetized, mostly because right now I think I have to. It might seem scummy, but I hope that you're going to understand that this, I don't have a better word than drama, but this incident has hurt my business in a significant way, and I absolutely can't turn down much of anything right now that could make sure I could cover my business costs. But I'm compelled to also promise to do something outside of myself with it, so I will be, assessing what I need to cover those costs and doing a donation otherwise to the Trevor Project from profits from this episode. Okay, so why did I turn off comments on the first Gabbie and Rachel video and then go on a blocking spree? First of all, let me say this. I shouldn't have made that video at all. It was a mistake, and it was one I made in the heat of the moment when I was mad at Rachel for saying things in an interview about me that I didn't agree with. I want to say directly to Rachel and Rachel only right now, I'm sorry I made that video. I really feel like I needed to do something but I should have at least tried to reach out and ask if we could talk privately. In a way, even though we're not friends anymore, I now see, and have also heard from many comments, that I was basically breaking the same kind of trust that I felt like Rachel had broken before. But I did make that video, and I thought I said everything I needed to, but you don't know what you missed until it's pointed out. So the number one reason I turned off comments was this, and many of you still won't agree with it. It isn't that I can't receive any criticism or that I want to make sure no one ever sees a negative thing. It was that the narratives being spun in the comments I felt weren't accurate. People were making claims about me that weren't true, and even if that was their honest assessment, I didn't have time to take on and correct each one. And if I'd tried, I probably would have fucked that up anyway. Like, I don't know if you've all noticed, I'm not right now doing very good at responding to people that I'm mad at for misrepresenting me. But I will tell you, this is now something I have brought up in therapy, and we're actually like dedicating a lot of the foreseeable future to try and fix that. I'm very aware that when I engage with somebody who I feel like is misrepresenting me, I lose my friggin' mind. I think I got used to it from all of the arguments with religious people and telling me like I can't have morals and stuff. And then I forgot to turn it off, and it grew and became hateful and just sort of expanded into other places. But I will say, I have said for years, my biggest pet peeve is being told what my intention and feelings are by someone who has no idea. Not just somebody who doesn't know me, but somebody who's saying from, for example, a text that your tone was this. That drives me wild. And I think everybody in my personal life knows that. I'm going to be later responding to some of the specific claims people made, but that was a big part of it. So here's some of the other reasons why I did that. The first few hours of the video, while there were people who were mad, it was mostly the same kinds of things. And actually there were lots of people who were kind and supportive and said, the popular on my quote unquote side sentiment was, it seems like there was a miscommunication here and it's understandable and I hope you guys can fix this. But on the negative side, it was mostly the same kinds of things where people would leave in a huff because I had said I was friends with Gabbie. I'm not kidding. That was for the first few hours. Most popular was, you're friends with Gabbie, I'm out. And then when drama channels covered my video and spun what I said, the comments all shifted to the narratives they put out there. And that video had less than 20% engagement before I turned off the comments, which indicates to me that a lot of people weren't even watching half of it. And yet there was all of these, I believe, false narratives going. So while I'm definitely here to also talk about the things I did wrong, turning off the comments on that is actually not one I regret, but maybe my communication about it, that I probably do. And I also acknowledge that it made people feel like I didn't want to hear things that I don't agree with. I hope you'll be happy to know that, first of all, even the comments that got deleted and blocked, I read most of them. Part of why I'm not doing great. Second, I have now had conversations with creators and experts that I felt could help me figure out what I did and didn't do wrong. I didn't just seek criticism. At a certain point, I did go, I need to find criticism, but it has to be qualified criticism, because even large groups on the internet that, again, if they stemmed from narratives that came from other places, it just doesn't work. So I went and sought criticism from, like I said, other creators and qualified people. But some of you on an individual level probably feel slighted by me. And in some cases, I totally did slight you. But I do want you to know, for 95+% of you, it was not at all personal. For the same reasons I talked about before, and mostly now my mental health, there's still going to be the same policy for a little while, as hopefully this starts a conversation and I hope diffuses. However, I still want to say to you that if you felt betrayed by me, and you are, especially those people who have supported me for so long, only to have me turn on you by deleting you or blocking you, I am actually sorry. And I'm sorry for how the feelings that invoked. For the record, the Jimmy Snow you have seen recently that you don't like, I don't really like that guy either. And I hope you're going to understand that I already knew that negative profiles of me were being painted in a lot of places, and I needed to universally shut that off my channel because truly, it just felt like it was coming from everywhere and people were poisoning the well. Now, it's also a fact that many people complaining that I'm shutting down criticism, they weren't actually there for that. They were there to build and participate in a public attempt at pushing a few different narratives, at frankly pushing my cancellation. I reminded people that if they have something they want me to read, I have an email and I have a voicemail, which I realize as I'm saying out loud now, I do read the voicemails, it transcribes them. But almost no one took that up. Only a few dozen people compared to thousands of people who are wanting to repeat talking points that I think came from the drama channels. I actually know they came from those channels. And any message I did receive directly to me about the issue, except for I think there was like 2 that were like 50 pages long, I actually did read those. But people who tried to force points and conversations elsewhere before I was ready, where I had the power to block, I did. But I wasn't doing a great job of communicating that I needed the space or that I wasn't ready. Now, for now, people who try to state things about me as facts that I know to be untrue, I'm definitely still going to be blocking. People who just outright lie and go, no, I'm sure it's still X, Y, or Z. Even people who say stuff like Jimmy's just been lying about Rachel. But what lie have I told? Definitely talked about a disagreement. So yeah, there's still going to be people who get blocked. At some point, depending on how vigilant the people wanting to cancel me are, once things cool down, I'm actually planning to unblock everybody who has been blocked from the last month or who will be blocked between now and that blocking moment. It's become clear to me that many of the comments which totally misrepresented what I said were made as bad faith arguments or at times were just all out lies. But also, I'm aware that Gabbie is one of the single most hated people on YouTube, perhaps the most hated person on YouTube, and that regardless of whether or not that hatred is justified, which for me and my personal philosophy, hatred of an individual is almost never justified. That's my worldview. But even if it was, I know that the obsession with hating her is also real. I'm not saying that everyone who disagrees with her, dislikes her, or criticizes her is that way. I'm not saying that. In fact, I'm not even saying most of those people are that way. But it's so many people that even it being a subset, there are thousands of people right now who have such an obsessive hatred of her that a major part of their day, every day, is trying to burn down her world and anything it touches. And some of those people, it was clear, were in my comments. And then final reasons why I turned off the comments and went on a blocking spree. With all of that in mind, was that not only was the engagement on the video itself low, as in how much people were watching of the video before leaving, sorry, I'm getting all jumbled, but to me that indicates most people weren't even trying to hear me out. I already suspected that. And then I noticed there were more views on videos spinning and changing what I said and changing my motivation than on my video itself. So there are entire channels who get virtually no views on any other video, except now when they're talking about me or they're talking about Gabbie and me. But now it actually works to just be me. And I'm not kidding. Those channels are getting thousands of views. There will be people watching who go, they are? Well, I'm going to jump in, which is disappointing. And because I know I'm not the way they say I am, it fucking hurts, man, to see people do that and for them to not care about how they are painting you because it's getting them so many views. So the comments, yes, they were turned off, and for that video, they're not going back on. In fact, I'll likely be removing that video before long because it also doesn't fall in line with the actual things I want my channel to be about. I don't even know why it's still up now, except for that, honestly, I've been afraid of the fallout if I take it off. But I would like to restate that if you send me a personal email or a voicemail, while I'm not going to be able to reply to all of them, depending on how many, I might not even be able to reply to most, but your message will very likely be read. And as long as I have the spoons, it'll probably be read quickly, within at least a few hours. Okay, next, I know it feels like I'm stretching everything out, but I feel like I have to be so thorough right now because while yes, I totally did say things wrong in the last video, there's also a level of I wasn't thorough, and where I wasn't thorough, A lot of people injected a lot of stuff. So I have to talk about my social philosophy, and while it sounds boring, it's very important to the rest of the video. Pivotal, actually. Let me start with an admission. The way I phrased it last time was really, really fucking stupid. Like so bad. And I think I had stated it like that before, and it just, now having actually thought about it, it was bad. So I don't blame people for thinking that I was saying that I am only a bad person's friend in the hopes that I can change them. That would actually be gross if it was true, to be honest. And it just wasn't a good way to put that. A better way to say it would have been to say, I won't deny others what was my salvation, which was that when I was a bigot of just about every kind, and I was, my friends still saw value in being my friend and saw value even regardless of the bigotry. And they were patient and wonderful, even though I was shitty. So now I also want to give you a little more context. I grew up as a Mormon. Mormonism is a cult. One of the things it specializes in is called us versus them, as well as this proficient skill in othering. In Mormonism, you absolutely learn to isolate yourself from people and things that would challenge your beliefs. You are also taught how to have friendships with non-believers, but only with the ultimate goal of converting them. When I left that church, I was still shitty and doing those same types of things for a long time. I only wanted friends who agreed with me unless I felt like there was a chance I could change somebody to the way I thought. But I was miserable, even after Mormonism for quite a while. Extremely, extremely miserable. In my mid-20s, I started to broaden my mind, and I set the bedrock for what would be the foundation of my activism. And I 100% know that what I'm about to say, I'm just going to get accused of virtue signaling, and there's nothing I can do about it because it feels important to me, and it's true, and it matters. As an atheist, the people who have most influenced my personal and social philosophy were actually two super religious dudes. Different religions, but religious. The first one was Martin Luther King Jr., and the second one was Gandhi. Actually, then a few years later, I would read the story of Daryl Davis, and I feel like that is when everything got sort of solidified. All three men taught me how to be a better man and to be a fierce person without succumbing to toxic masculinity. And at the core of what I learned from them was to be bold and to not shy away from confrontation, but to also love everyone, your enemies included. They also taught me that we should always hope for justice, but then rehabilitation, not just revenge. And for those of you who don't know who Daryl Davis is, he's an African-American man who started befriending members of the KKK and starting a collection of the Klan robes that they would give them when through their friendship, they would ultimately leave. That dude is like the fucking biggest badass in the world to me. So instead of saying, I will be your friend so you will change, that's not actually how I feel. The way I actually feel is, I will be your friend regardless of our disagreements because all humans have value and deserve to be treated like humans. Now, I know I use the word all, but there's actually limits and there's nuance and actually barriers. The first barrier to becoming my friend is meeting me in the first place. I am super duper isolated. I am super duper introverted. I know my persona, like on air shows contrary. People who know me in real life would not argue these points. Also, I have huge trust issues. Some of them are not rational. I think a lot of it stems from the trauma of losing most of my community when I left Mormonism. But I'm definitely super paranoid about whether or not, I know I'm gonna this one's hard. I'm super paranoid about whether or not people only like me in as much as they can use me. And also, I am painfully aware that I'm flawed. And so yes, I have ended friendships mostly over breaches of trust, although almost never just the first time, unless it's a big one. It won't mean that I wish ill will on the person. In fact, I've still promoted people after our friendship ended in the past, but I do have my limits. Also, there's a huge problem with how we use a lot of words that just don't go. Basically, the word friendship or friend, it's too universal of a word. We don't accurately and satisfactorily describe levels of friendship with the word friend. So here I also want to note why it has been taken so long for me to address this all, and it's simple. I was not ready before now. If I had rushed and just apologized for everything people said they disagreed with, it wouldn't have been genuine. I needed to be able to cool off from the defensive state I was in and get to a place where I could really start considering and listening and truthfully, like, I hope I'm there now, but I don't know if I am. But there's been a sense of urgency lately that I'm kind of taking a shot at it as soon as I feel like maybe I'm ready to go. So I don't know if I'm all the way there yet. I don't know. Okay, sorry. There's so much. I promise we're getting closer to specifically the Gabbie and Rachel stuff. There's a couple more things that need to come first because we need them to make those sections do justice. I really feel like I need to address a super common accusation that people are starting to make even videos about, which is that I use autism as a shield. And this is one of the things where I am fully going to reject this. It's one of the few things in here I'm fully going to reject, but I'm going to tell you why. Yes, I have 100% talked about my autism to explain why I might have said something, why I might have not understood something in its original context. But I have never once said that you have to excuse a thing that I've done to someone because I'm autistic. I will absolutely use it as an explanation, but I don't believe I have ever used it as an excuse. I even had one very critical person reach out and tell me that they're autistic and that they learned that they have to apologize to neurotypical people when they had no idea what they were saying or doing was wrong, but literally because they couldn't know, but that it's still good to do and to apologize and say, I'm sorry I did that, not anything like I'm sorry for how it made you feel. And I gotta tell you, I fucking disagree so hard with that sentiment. That is to me saying that I need to apologize and that autistic people need to apologize because we need to accept that the world belongs to neurotypicals and that we have to go out of our way just to think about them and make them comfortable, which, by the way, we already do so much when we're masking. So this to me was the controversial, conversational equivalent of telling a paraplegic person that they need to apologize for needing an elevator. But actually the fucked up thing is I actually know paraplegic people and I know some of them do apologize for things like that, for things they can't control. Basically, this is ableism to me. For some, it's just internalized, and for others, it's just plain ableism. But I will say, even knowing all of that, if I know that I have made a person feel wronged, even by something that I couldn't conceive of being wrong, I will still try to fix it. And I will still, hopefully, through explaining what I meant, try to fix it. But I'm not going to not bring up my autism when it's relevant. So yes, the autism shield thing, this one was really fucking me up. It was super shitty. And I've spoken a lot about it to my therapist. And basically my conclusion, not necessarily theirs, though I feel like they would agree, is that I think it was brought up to help people excuse ignoring things about my diagnosis. And so they could use traditionally ableist speech like, it's not autism, you're just an asshole. Which, by the way, is a super common ableist phrase that autistics get to hear all the time. All right, let's talk about what a lot of you are here for. My fan interactions. And technically it's in a minority of them, but lately it seemed like a lot more. They've not been great. More specifically, my interactions with fans and commenters who are being confrontational. And I'm working on it, kind of like what I was talking about before in therapy. That doesn't mean that I don't think that many of the times I said fuck off aren't justified at all regarding the conversation itself, but I definitely had forgotten the same thing that I asked Rachel to do. To not forget. I forgot that there are humans on the other side. And so to anyone I hurt by treating them basically like they were a Twitter bot, that was fucked up. And I was wrong, and I am sorry. And this is a character flaw of mine, and it's a tough one. When I get defensive, I get angry. And plenty of my logical faculties basically take a break. But again, I want you to know I'm working on that. I know I'm a person who's going to be in therapy my whole life, and I will never be perfect, even on the last day. I know that's hard to believe because, as we've all declared, I'm the reincarnated Jesus. I just needed like some kind of joke break here right now. Doesn't really feel like it landed though. It's hard to know. Anyway, my therapist also pointed out to me how much power a condemnation might have from a public figure. So while I know I'm a goddamn nobody, like to myself, the person I'm fighting with on the other side of this is in a power imbalance. And that makes the weight of my words a lot heavier. And so I have to be a lot more responsible. This conversation the conversation I had with my therapist also changed my opinion on some things that led to this whole situation. For example, if I'm being honest, I now think it would have been better for Gabbie to have not engaged or gone after Rachel at all. Now, I kind of already felt a little that way, but I didn't like some of the ways that she had gone for Rachel, and I didn't like a lot of the words she had used. But I wasn't as offended by the idea that somebody went after someone they felt like brought negativity in their life. I was definitely wrong about that. I now believe that she should have just let the thing go, and a lot of that because she has a way larger platform than Rachel, and that does matter. I've also learned more about the human impact of things that before I would have just called YouTube drama. I've learned a lot more about how Rachel must have felt with all of that hate coming her way, and I'm horrified that I didn't know before. Unfortunately, no one knows. No one knows until you go through it. You don't know how you'll feel, and you certainly don't fucking know how you're going to act. Don't get me wrong, YouTube drama definitely does still exist though. That's for sure. But I will say that I dismiss too much as just being YouTube drama. And it came off elitist because I was sort of acting as though I was above it all. Now, the good news is, as far as when I got in these fights, not that many people come to my defense when people come for me. And part of that's because I try to never like weaponize my fans to come to my aid. I don't, retweet somebody being a jerk if it's just a random person. I think I don't do that. I know someone's going to go find a tweet from last year where it's like, you did it that time. And if I did, I fucking sucked, man. But again, I'm going to do better going forward. And I promise I'm not going to be perfect, but I will tell you that I'm not going to be perfect, and there might be more blocks. Honestly, like changing this probably means there will be more blocks in certain places, at least as a policy, not necessarily like overall number. Because while I feel like I've realized I shouldn't be fighting with people, even if they're trying to be antagonistic or saying things I completely disagree with, if they are from my audience, if they are from that small base. And obviously, if we're talking about really harmful things, that's completely different. But people being antagonistic toward me, I shouldn't be fighting with them. But I'm also not going to be continually exposing myself to the negativity that comes on repeat or let them use my platforms to spread negativity about me. I can't do anything about their platforms. And actually, I believe in freedom of speech, even when a person is lying and even when a person is lying about me. Unfortunately, that's just the way it has to be. Unfortunately, that's the best system we got. So, losing my voice a little bit. It's been rough, man. It's been rough. There's kind of reasons why it's been going out. I want to say to anybody that I told to fuck off, I'm sorry for doing it. I really am. This feels like there's going to be a but. It's like, I know that with a few people, it felt so warranted, and it's hard to get past those few people and go like, okay, but even if it felt warranted for those, it wasn't for so many. And honestly, even the people I felt warranted for, it wasn't warranted to be public. So even the ones that I was really mad at, I am sorry. And I fucking feel bad. And I feel like there's a lot of people who, when they bring this stuff up, like to compare it to ways I must have been in the past as a Mormon. And the hard part is like, I can kind of evaluate just that criticism and go like, sure, that from Mormonism, I kind of see it. But it sucks, man. And this is where this all comes in, to be told when you know how much work you've done, that you basically are just still a Mormon. And I shouldn't be even telling you all the comments that hurt me the most, because now it's literally going to become like people's favorite things to write. Maybe that'll help me get over it though. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I just am. I am sorry. As a quick note, I will also talk about how I feel about friendships and dating fans, since we're talking generally about fan interactions. It's come up a little bit, both of them, so here is that. Let me start off by saying that in both cases, friendships and dating, it's tricky. And as a public figure, you have to go out of your way to make sure you aren't violating a power imbalance. I'll also say this, some of my best friendships have begun with fans and people who discover me. It's also hard too, because this word fans, we have this image in our mind, and like friends, for a lot of people, when I say fans, I'm literally just talking about someone who's like, I really enjoyed hearing you say what I think and how I feel. But it's hard for me to regret, like there's some people who just think that there's no way to do this. And I've met some of the people I just care so much about and like the most in the world in that world. And so it's hard to convince me that I should regret any of that. I'm trying to do this whole thing in one take, and I feel like I might get the hiccups, and that would definitely interrupt that. Having friends with similar values is always an awesome thing. And for myself, though I don't think you should only have friends with similar values, but it's great to have. And for myself, the fact that my channel isn't really that big, which maybe is just my subjective opinion, I've literally never felt like it was that big. I think that I always eyeball 1 million as like, that's when it's kind of getting big, but it's subjective. But I haven't worried that much about making friendships and whether that could be unethical, unless I actually were to do something shitty, like trying to leverage my platform for favors or adoration. Like, hey, if you do this for me, you're going to get a shout out. And I've tried to avoid doing that. Not just tried, I've definitely avoided doing that the entire time. Even the artists that I had hired and did a shout out on the channel, I also paid them, and I paid them their rate. Also, anybody who meets me in person is honestly, even like, and by person, I also mean over Zoom or something, meeting me quickly disillusions you. Like, you know those creators that like say they're just a normal guy off the camera? That is not me. I am weird as fuck when the camera turns off, and my social performances often change at the drop of a hat. I am much more low-key of a person, and honestly, I think in person I'm pretty boring. But I think the trick with being friends with most people, with people who first met you as fans, is being aware that an imbalance could be there and just never try to exploit it. But because it's also come up recently, I'll address dating fans also. First of all, I'll say this. I think it is absolutely possible for a person to date or have a casual relationship for someone who started as their fan. Again, acknowledging that fan means too many things. There is a class of fans I don't agree with that on. But I also think it's still tricky, and my thoughts have changed over the years. Because do remember, I've only been big for like 2 years now. And honestly, it's something I've learned as I've gone. So before that big 2 years, for the first year, I was so small that it wouldn't have even occurred to me to like think a power imbalance could exist. As long as it was a healthy, honest, and consensual relationship, that was good enough for me. And I mean, that's just how relationships should be in general. But for me, I was just a dude that was making videos in his bedroom or living room. Once things grew, I knew that there had to be a new emphasis on being completely open with intentions and possibilities, which obviously that's already a good possibility, but at a certain point, you have to go out of your way more and probably have the conversation a few times. In that second year of my channel, I had a few very flirty relationships, some of which were explicit, though never in person, and others which were more romantic and felt like they could have become something a little bigger. There's at least one that felt like both, possibly. But things moved on. Distance was usually a factor, and looking back, I definitely think that I would tell my old self that some of them started with a heavy sexual aspect, again, at a distance, but a heavy sexual aspect that probably started there too soon. Because while it is like super validating to have someone reach out to you, especially if you're attracted to them, and they just ask you right off the bat if you want to see them naked, it would still have been better to put more time into a friendship, more conversations to get to know a person before. Let them get to know the person behind the camera before just jumping in there. There is I guess that's probably something more recently that I've evolved on and what I think. Hindsight's always obviously 2020. Again, I did always make sure to have a conversation about expectations and boundaries. That is something that I can say for sure happened every time. But I do think that I could have done more. I do absolutely think that it is possible, which brings me to the third year of my channel, so the third year of my channel has been mostly made up of my current relationship with some breaks that occurred in it and a period of some openness. And so the conversations about boundaries and intentions definitely got better during those times, as did building friendships before getting too flirty with someone. But the hard part about my life in general is that I haven't met almost anyone in the last few years that wasn't somehow linked to my channel. Because again, I don't go out. I don't like going out. And so my current relationship is with someone who I am positive. She knows me better than anybody has honestly ever known me. She has a full understanding of who I am, and she does not experience a power imbalance. But yes, when we matched on Tinder, she did already know who I was. She had seen some videos, and I would say it was that casual level of like, yeah, I like watching your videos. Were I to ever be single again, which, I hope that doesn't happen because I love my partner to the moon and back, but were I to be single again, I'm not 100% sure where I would be on all of this because I don't even have to consider all of it now because I'm not single. I think I would probably try dating disconnected from my channel now though, because I just wouldn't want to risk getting something wrong. There's actually times where I had done this anyway. There were entire phases where I had been repulsed when a flirty person told me that they knew who I was. But yeah, I guess things got more nuanced over time. And I'm sure there are people who will think there is no way for people to be friends or romantic with fans. And I guess I just disagree. I don't agree with you. Also, I still have a hard time coming to terms with that there is a power imbalance. I'm not discounting that it exists. It does exist. But seriously, if you knew me, you would know I genuinely feel like such a nobody in my personal life that it is hard to perceive sometimes that a power imbalance could exist. This has been true across the board, like, as I mentioned, with being unkind to people I felt attacked by. I think that part of that was motivated by not really understanding anything beyond this person is on Twitter and I'm on Twitter and not going beyond that. So all of that I was just talking about with relationships definitely ties back in. Okay, now to the bigger points that have been popular accusations that were coming my way. Sorry for all the water breaks. There is a very popular one that has popped up that I, Jimmy Snow, am a rape apologist. This is another one that I reject 100%. I resent the assertion, and I am honestly contemptuous of those who say this. First of all, the word apologist does not refer to apologies, which I see a lot of people who think it does and don't even understand why they're using that phrase. Apologist refers to apologetics. That is a practice. It is the practice of defending and justifying controversial topics. It's most commonly a term used to refer to people who defend religious concepts, things that seem very barbaric and illogical. For example, apologists are those who would try to defend biblical slavery or that free will exists or things like that from a religious standpoint. And usually those apologetics come with like a lot of baggage. So I'm going to be very upfront now. There was a time in my life I absolutely was a rape apologist. That is actually true of a past iteration of me. Now, I think that almost entirely existed when I was a Mormon, and then it was something I had to lose when I got out of Mormonism. And rape apologetics are the kinds of things that I literally dedicate so much time to on fighting on my channel. Like when I fight the transformed wife who says that marital rape is impossible, that you can't be raped by your husband. It's automatically consented to. Or when I fight implications from people like Paul and Morgan and Girl Defined who like to write off a lot about the culture and what is happening on the basis of like, well, women were wearing such and such, so, we have to hold them responsible too. To be a rape apologist is to justify, to defend, or excuse rape. And that is not something I do. And I insist that people who do something like that can change. And I'm not going to let somebody define me by mistakes that I was brainwashed and abused with in my past. But then I also get accused of defending or supporting a rape apologist, specifically Gabbie Hanna. And so I want to say this first. One, being a friend's person, that's being a person's friend, that does not mean that you condone a single action of theirs. And I also think that every single person watching, every person probably in existence has at least one friend or family member with a super shitty view. Now, I'm definitely aware that Gabbie has had some real bad takes in the past. Horrible. I know that there was a time she didn't believe a certain friend about being raped, and that she also expressed a sentiment about most rapes being lied about and other things. I also know that people who have gone through similar experiences have been severely hurt by those sentiments by Gabbie. And when it comes to the term itself, it is one I don't take lightly. And I admit I have trouble assigning it to people. Even knowing that past takes can be bad, I always want to evaluate those current takes. And on this one, I don't know. I don't know what I feel on that. But this doesn't mean that I think Gabbie's done nothing wrong, that Gabbie doesn't deserve criticism. However, I'm not going to be making public videos laying out Gabbie's sins, because there's already hundreds of those. There are literally hundreds of videos doing that, maybe thousands. And while I know people don't think she deserves the consideration, to tell you the truth, I do worry about her mental health. I have a hard time when people use the phrase, you're supporting or defending a rape apologist also. Because the implication there is that when you use the phrase like that, it makes it sound like I am defending the actions related to rape apologetics, which anyone who has watched my channel knows I would never do that. And once again, I know it was true about me years ago, and the people who changed my mind were actually mostly progressive women. If they could handle staying friends with me, then I feel like I can handle it too. And I'm going to continue doing that, believing that being friends with people with messed up views, again, there are limits. I certainly wouldn't befriend an actual rapist. But I believe being friends with people with bad views, even bad views about serious topics, leads to a better world. I'm in no way trying to be a saint. I'm not trying to virtue signal when I say I want to be a positive part of a person's life. And I know people will think that I am naive, but I really do want to be the person to others that other people were to me. So now let's talk about the most common accusation. I picked Gabbie Hanna over Rachel because Rachel posted a critical video of Gabbie's poetry. So let me start with something I definitely did wrong. I just shouldn't have said anything to Rachel about the review, even though my intentions were absolutely pure. The only reason why I brought it up was because, believe it or not, empathy. Something that I used to think I didn't have enough of, and then learning how it works with autistic people, lately I feel like I have too much. If everything people say about Gabbie is true, she still doesn't deserve all the hatred that she receives. And I said that in the last video, and I'm not kidding. People disagreed, which is insane to me because she literally gets threats of murder and threats of rape. And then anytime she posts a video, hundreds of comments immediately telling her she's horrible or a piece of shit or whatever else within moments before anyone could have watched the video at all. But I don't think anything Rachel was making was even in the same realm of stuff like that. I will once again state now, I am not defending a single action or video, but I am defending that despite how the internet might feel, that Gabbie still deserves to be treated like a human because she is one. That does not mean do not extend consequences. It's a very nuanced topic for sure. It does not mean ignoring bad things she's done. I also now know how hard it is when you are being exposed to constant negativity and how your mental health can go completely down the toilet. Mine definitely has. And I feel like I have an empathy for that, even for somebody and others who have done crappy things and said crappy things. Also, I will tell you that negativity, it creates this urgency in you. Like you need to get things out, and in some cases that you have to fight back. And again, because I have seen how this gets interpreted, I'm going to restate, I am not defending any individual action. I am only saying that I refuse to forget that a person is human. And I think about it more than you realize, even when it comes to people like Girl Defined. So the first thing that keeps getting lost and changed from the video I did was that while I knew the whole thing was going to be a book review, the actual thing that was bothering me were these Insta and Twitter posts that to me seemed very unkind. And actually, in comments Rachel has left in other places, Rachel called them childish. But I 100% understand that the way that first message came across seemed like it was trying to change the tone of a review. I do think that I explained and cleared it up in the messages that followed. However, I know that by the time that happened, Rachel was already mad, and now I know that there were these other things going on in her life that likely made it harder for her to have that conversation with me in a productive way. And I totally understand. If those things were happening to me, I would have been the same. But they are things that were happening in her life that at that time I didn't know were happening. But here's also the thing. While I do think my intentions and my words have been totally spun and totally misrepresented by channels talking about it and by people who are pushing narratives, I also think that the message was wrong for a different reason. I have since learned that a community and set of ethics for book reviewers exist. And that blew my friggin' mind, considering the fact that I have done several book reviews and was never aware I didn't know that community exists, and I was certainly never approached by a community like that. So when I approached Rachel about her Insta and her Twitter promos and talking more broadly about the review, the content of the review itself didn't actually matter to me. I only wanted to say something that might have reduced this new wave of negativity Gabbie was getting before the review was out. But the thing is, I shouldn't have. That's unethical, especially in referencing like book reviews and how you could change that. I didn't know that. I genuinely didn't, but I do completely accept that it was unethical, and I would go back and change it if I could on the basis that I now know it's wrong. In fact, it's funny because it's not even just that I didn't know that that existed. I didn't know that I didn't know. Does that make sense? There are plenty of people who've said that like I should have researched review ethics, and I feel you. I feel that you wish I had done that. And I agree like with your feelings that you wish I should have done that. But I didn't even know such a thing existed. So, contrary to some narratives, I was not trying to manipulate anyone, and the conversation I was not trying to manipulate anyone in the way, yes, I was trying to increase kindness, and you could actually say that is manipulative, but not in the way people have presented it. And the conversation I was thinking we would have was not the conversation Rachel and I ended up having. But I do totally acknowledge that it was flawed, that I made a mistake, and I should not have sent that first message. I do think that there are many of the people who were angry here that, like many of the people that were so angry, I think if they removed Gabbie from the equation, they would actually see easily that I was not trying to do anything malicious or shitty. Now, as far as picking Gabbie over Rachel, that's simply just not true. My friendship with Rachel ended because I felt like she violated my trust, not once, but 3 times. Now, a lot of people like to say that the first time was my fault because I technically am who outed myself as being a part of this conversation she had put on Twitter. I disagree with that. Rachel shared details of a conversation that was totally reasonable to expect to be between us with the public. It's like if you and I are friends and we have a friend called John and I speak to you about John, it is totally reasonable to expect you to keep that conversation between you and I unless we discuss it otherwise. So in this case, Rachel talked about John, Gabbie, but John from the metaphor, and that already to me was the first time she broke my trust. The only reason I outed myself as part of that conversation was that she also was sharing inaccurate details of the conversation itself, And those were being used to push a new wave of problems at Gabbie. And again, regardless of if you think she deserves negativity, I don't want to be I don't want to be responsible for that. I don't want to be the one who sent it. So yes, I did publicly correct on Twitter what was said and admit that this conversation she was posting about, that I was the other person. Then that evening, I think it's honestly so long ago that it's kind of like hard to remember, but Rachel took what should have been another conversation between us and started up again publicly on Twitter. This time she was inebriated, and I tried to minimize what would happen. And while I felt like this was my trust broken again, I still wasn't ready to drop our entire friendship there. I did what I could to try and keep things cordial. And when she asked, "What do you want from me?" I simply said, "I just want to talk, the two of us, privately." But then the next morning, instead of talking to me, she went back to Twitter. And that was my last one. It felt like 3 times my trust had been broken in a way that's like hard for me to navigate because, yes, I'm gonna say it, I'm autistic. And when you're autistic, it's already hard enough to try and explain yourself to one person, let alone explain yourself to one person with 1,000 referees around you. Now listen, I've definitely learned since then that what Rachel was going through was intense and serious, and I now know that a lot more was going on. Had I known that at the time, I probably would have also dismissed the 3rd incident. I will say that, Rachel, I seriously hope you have all the support and everything you need. I would have absolutely not turned you away if you had needed help and had asked for it during that time, even after I was mad at you. If you need it in the future, of course, whatever I could do. But for me, my trust was broken. And at the time, that was why I decided I couldn't stay in that situation. As far as picking between them, I have never felt like I've had to pick between the two, and neither of them have either asked me to. I also would have been completely fine if during that first message, Rachel just told me to fuck off. I probably would have wanted to take a couple of days to reset, but being told to fuck off, and I want it to be true, that telling others to fuck off shouldn't be the end of a friendship. Now, in regards to my friendship with Gabbie Hanna, I'm not going to go into incredible detail. I'm not going to be sharing like contents of conversations because, like I just said, I think that would violate our trust. But Gabbie and I are friends because she reached out after seeing some of my content, and we ended up having very interesting conversations about those things. It's worth noting, though, that it probably wouldn't have changed much, but when we were having those conversations, I was mostly unaware of Gabbie's history. When we met, I honestly thought her biggest crimes were like these edgy TikToks. Either way, I tend to want to give people the benefit of the doubt. And she showed a lot of interest in my story and also was excited to share stories of her own with someone that she felt could understand. Now, that said, we've also had very big disagreements and have gotten in very heated fights. Usually also about things that are related to supernatural stuff, I guess you could say, but other things too. But as far as our friendship goes, we are friendly and we are kind to each other, but we don't talk very often at all. And I feel like that's been lost too in calling her my friend. Like this year, we've only spoken a couple of times for the entire year. And then a handful of times before make up our entire friendship before that. But I just personally do not believe in guilt by association or isolating people that we don't agree with. If anything, I actually believe that those are horrible practices, that those make the world more polarized and more violent. Believe it or not, I absolutely have no problem telling Gabbie things that I don't like or agree with. But again, we don't talk that often, so we're not covering that much stuff. I don't also think so much of myself or so little of her humanity that I think she doesn't deserve me as just a kind and positive person in her life. Now, I will tell you, I can't speak for the future. I'm going to hope for the best and prepare for the worst. But I would say as of late, there have been details that I have learned more recently, a lot coming from some of you, that have made me much more apprehensive, and I am probably now a little more on guard than I was before. However, again, I'm hoping for the best. I want to say too, I do totally understand that many people have very strong feelings about Gabbie. I know that there are people who still feel upset with some of her actions and certainly feel upset about her extremely toxic public relationship with Jessie Smiles. And I want to say to you who feel that way, I assure you, I am not asking you to like her or to be her friend too. I'm not going to fight with you. I'm not going to tell you that your feelings are wrong. But I would like it if you'd maybe extend the same to me. And so that brings me to this. There has been a narrative running off all of this that I have been silencing sexual assault survivors. And the implication when someone says that and say, like, tags you in a post with other women that you work with while completely making bad faith arguments is that you're trying to shut up women who have been assaulted because they had been assaulted, because they were sex assault victims. This is simply not true. And it is a narrative that could be driven with any group, honestly. You could do this with anyone. Anyone who tried to push the conversation when I wasn't ready or post things about me that weren't true, yeah, I blocked them, regardless of who they were. So a person could cherry pick from those people I blocked. So they say they picked out just black women or just trans men or whatever group you like and say that I'm silencing those people too because they were being blocked. The thing is that everyone was being blocked. That's kind of it. That's kind of the depth of it all. But I do understand that if you have concerns about my associations, that could be coming from a place that is genuine, that is from your experience, and that it might hurt extra if you are then blocked. So I'm not saying I'm taking nothing from that criticism, just not the criticism as it exists on the surface. Because I do absolutely take exception that I was targeting these people for silence. And honestly, I can't really silence anybody. I can stop you from using my platform. I can stop you from trying to force conversations and narratives on my platform, but I have never tried or advocated shutting down the platforms of others, even those platforms that have people lying about me, like completely whole cloth lies. And I will tell you, I am a victim of sexual assault myself. I've mentioned it on my channel. I don't like to go a lot into detail about it. But anybody who has seen my channel knows that I take sexual assault super seriously. And I really think that this gets to the point that hurts the most. Seeing people reduce all of the work I've done, all the work I've done on myself, all the work I've tried to do for others, and trying to make the case that none of that matters and that I shouldn't be able to keep my platform, which I think has been used almost entirely, mostly to try and make the world a better place. Even the Sometimes Show is built to raise social awareness and promote causes that I care about, even if obviously sometimes the Sometimes Show does it through humor, sometimes crude humor, sometimes gross humor. I've seen those comments too. Right now it feels like my platform is trying to be pried away from me because of some things people have put in a negative column while completely ignoring a positive column. And if I'm being honest, it has hurt a lot. It has been destroying me. So regarding the Gabbie and Rachel situation and my fan interactions, I guess I would just say, like, and hopefully now you know it, there is nuance to these things. But other than that, that's what I have to say there. I do know that people have taken this time, especially while there is so much coming at me, to voice some other issues and some other grievances. So I think it's actually better to lay everything on the table, even though I don't know how much of a voice I have left. But I want to address a couple of those as well. A number of you were upset when I switched my content almost entirely from Dear Mr. Atheist to the Sometimes Show. And you know what? I get it. I was not open enough because I didn't even really know what I was doing or what my plan was. I need you to understand that I was so burnt out on Dear Mr. Atheist. And at the time, it felt like I needed to get rid of it as much as I could. But that wasn't fair, and it happened too fast. Plus, you came to this channel looking for something, and I guess I kind of just took it away. I wish I had thought more about that impact sooner, but it wasn't actually complaints that made me realize the mistake that I had made. It was actually people that were emailing me about the impact Dear Mr. Atheist had on them. And I realized that I had cut off the potential for new impact, for future impact. I did need the break though, but it should be no surprise that I actually really missed doing it after a while. But I do also have to say that I really love doing the Sometimes Show. I know not all of you are sold on it. Maybe not even most of you are sold on it. But one of my favorite comments I get on there is that it's from people who say they hated it at first, but now they think it's awesome. The show is growing and I really do like it. But you also deserve the content that you came for. So while we're still going to keep up the Sometimes Show Monday through Thursday, we are right now trying to make sure that you get at least one segment during those Monday through Thursday shows of Dear Mr. Atheist, and then a dedicated of Dear Mr. Atheist on the weekend, at least one, sometimes more, especially when things aren't going so good and we need to push some traffic to the channel. The next thing I'm going to address is a twofer because they go together, and I think I just kind of did one of them a little. People feel like that I tried to manipulate people into watching the Sometimes Show, and that there are a number of you also who wish that I would shut up about numbers. Believe it or not, these are often the same thing. And I know people don't want to hear it, but yes, this is also from the autism. Not saying to excuse it, but I am explaining myself. Now, I will say, I know that all creators think about their numbers and try to do things to make them go up, but they don't talk publicly as much about it because it does rub audiences the wrong way. So they try to make it look innocent and good, or content, here's this cool reason. But I've learned more about that, about how it rubs audiences the wrong way and how it makes people feel like they're just a number and that my motives are purely analytics. I'm going to be real with you. On a personal level, I am obsessed with numbers. I really, really am. I love numbers. I love trying to predict what they are going to do. I love trying to figure out how to change them. I love numbers, but I should not have made that your problem. And I can tell you that my actual values aren't influenced by the numbers. I promise you, being a vocal queer activist, a trans-allied feminist, is not the way you do the best numbers on YouTube. And truthfully, when I started, I did not think things would be as big as they became. I thought I had the potential to do okay, but this thing took off at a speed that I couldn't even conceive would happen. Now, I regret how detached that I became lately from how wonderful this community is, because it is. We have built a great community. And I could make excuses, even ones that might be valid, about health and stuff. But the fact is, even with those intact, it doesn't really answer for how cold I've definitely come off lately. Now, as far as guilting people goes, I really didn't mean to. I certainly tried to promote the Sometimes Show, but I do realize that by broadcasting the feelings I was having of disappointment, that I know that either came off as manipulative or maybe it is manipulative. I didn't mean it to be, but maybe that's what it is. I think I was once again just being far more open than I apparently should be with an audience. And I'm going to try and work on that, as well as other times that I seem to be randomly open about other stuff, like random sexual thoughts that just come out when we're talking about something totally unrelated, like endangered turtles. Well, no, that one would make sense. Again, I needed a joke. For me, I'm just not doing good, man. Anyway, there are people who are specifically angry about this one post I made that I deleted shortly after I made it, as it seemed more like people were misreading my intentions than were actually getting what I was trying to say. The post said something like, I should have saved a copy, but to be clear, the choice wasn't to do the Sometimes Show or Dear Mr. Atheist. The choice was to do the Sometimes Show or quit. Now, what people may not know is I was actually responding to some negative comments I had just received that said something like, quit this and go back to Dear Mr. Atheist, this sucks, that kind of thing. There were a lot of expletives in some of them. And so I understand that by starting this community post with, to be clear, yeah, it did seem like I was trying to be confrontational to basically anybody who was reading and might not like the show. But also, people had interpreted that post to mean that I was saying, basically that in the future, I will quit if you don't watch. But that wasn't the case. I was actually describing the past, not the future. Basically, some of the things that I was toiling with, I guess it would have been around that previous autumn to winter time where I was going, I can't do this. I can't do this. If I keep doing this, I can't. I'm burnt out. I got to do something new or I got to quit. But it wasn't about the future, and it wasn't trying to tell you that I'm going to quit if you don't watch. But I did take that post down because of all the negativity that it created. And I tried to replace it with a super positive post, which, yeah, I know, that looks very passive aggressive. It actually wasn't my motivation at the time, but even in thinking back, I'm like, I'm not an expert on how most humans do things, but I totally see why that looked super passive aggressive. Now, there are also conspiracies going around about burnt bridges of mine. This is another one of the things that I'm just going to quickly address. And people that were great friends that haven't been on my channel anymore, that this conspiracy exists, that secretly I've had fallouts with a lot of these people. That is a mostly untrue conspiracy. Yes, there are a couple of people who I've cut off, and there are even a couple of people whose bridges I am proud to have burnt. But most of the creators that these conspiracies are being made about, they're actually still friends of mine. In reality, because of some complications and some mental health stuff and a set that wasn't ready for it, just a lot of things, I actually just stopped doing collabs. I did do some, I guess I still do some on the line, but I don't actually even control scheduling on the line anymore. So that's fun. Anyway, I'm not going to name specific names. I seriously don't want to drag anybody into this video as a whole. I feel like it might send people to them. But I got to tell you, making up stuff about my personal life, Jesus, that hurts. And it hurt a lot. It also hurts when you come up with ridiculous scenarios like asserting that I'm a narcissist who's manipulated my therapist into believing I'm changing. And the worst part is I don't know how to disprove that, because if you just tell somebody, disprove you aren't a narcissist, I feel like I would come off as a narcissist if I now started listing ways I've helped people. It's this one thing where it's like you make this assertion without evidence, but it's impossible to disprove. So what can a person do? All I can say is this, that if you believe me, which obviously there are going to be people who don't, I am totally open and totally honest with my therapists. I know I keep saying it plural. I have two. And I think that in the last couple of years, I have become significantly a better person. At the very least, less toxic, but I think maybe actually a good person. And the fact that I even have to say this blows my mind. But also in full honesty, I feel like people are off-put by this, but I kind of feel like it makes me more of a man to admit it really fucking hurt my feelings. It really did. And that negativity is a lot of what I've not been doing good with, but does not excuse the way I reacted to it. There's a bunch more going around about me, but I'm going to end with being told that I'm a hypocrite for crapping on drama channels, but then covering drama on my show. Making sure that this is still on, because I actually don't know. Here's hoping it's still recording over there. Basically covering that I'm a hypocrite because I've covered drama-like stuff. Here is originally what I wanted to say in response to that charge. When I brought up the Trisha Paytas stuff, I did try to make a point about not the drama, but how bad I feel for people like her when they are spiraling in full display of the public, and that by doing it publicly, it might make it impossible to get better. I, for one, personally try to keep my spirals as private as I can. Just ask my partner. Just ask my partner what the last few weeks have been like. Don't actually try to ask her. Stay away, please. I think that right now where we are with all of this is we had decided to take a shot on let's be public about our relationship. We're going to go back to being private. But here's what I'll say now about this idea that I was a hypocrite for the drama stuff. I kind of worry that you're right. I worry that for at least the last year or so of my content, that I've actually been participating in methods of criticism that go against what I believe. And so I'm working on that in therapy too. And I'm trying to be more mindful. I don't think it is actually about who you cover, but I do think it is about how you cover them or what you cover. I hope that makes sense, because I feel like it feels jumbled in my mind as I'm saying it. But also, to the people who thought I was being a hypocrite or showing a double standard when I wanted Rachel to be kinder to Gabbie and her social media posts, you're also probably right. I hope it means something to say that I am soul searching, for lack of a better term, a lot, and I'm thinking about this a lot, and I want to make sure that in the future there aren't double standards, that I don't look like a hypocrite. But I'm going to end with this. There are now people trying to expose me for my past, a past that I've been open about. So in case you don't watch my stuff, I'd like a chance for you to still hear it from me first. I used to be a nightmare of a person. I was basically every kind of bigot, though I thought I presented it intellectually, but nah, I just sucked. I have tried to always be open about that, but now there are people trying to weaponize that past against me as though it is a new revelation. Rest assured, I've never murdered somebody, I've never physically abused somebody, and I have never violated sexual consent of anyone. But I have been abusive trash in other ways, some of which I have gone into great details about. I've also been abused myself, and one of the most hurtful things that I've been seeing is there are now people trying to actually link up with abusers from my past. This one really bothers me, to see if they can get those people in to smear me. I have definitely made mistakes, and I'm still gonna make mistakes. I'm fucking made mistakes. Certainly not of the caliber of the kinds of things we're talking about above. You can't see above my outline, above on my outline here. But it can make me seem like a lot worse of a person when there are now people just dedicated to compiling every mistake they think I've made, and then mistakes that others have just made up, to the point that it was wearing down on me to where I was wondering if I'm the person they're saying and not the person I've experienced. I'd like to make sure that we rebuild a community here the way that we all liked it before. I want to rebuild that. But obviously this stuff makes it hard, and I am a person who is pretty full of fear for the future. But I will also say, the way that we got together this last week, when we fought together this bigoted business in Wyoming, that put a big old fire back in my belly, and I do not want to extinguish that fire. I want to get back to these things that matter so much. I want to get back to what is my activism. So I'm going to ask you all for a little bit of patience. I guess also, in addition, like I told you, I took a big hit mentally lately, and right now I'm going through a lot, which at the minimum is going to require some therapy to work through, and possibly some other things. I'm working out what I need right now. But right now, I'm going to do what I can while still backing off a bit on engagement and the like. So if I can ask a favor that might be a little audacious because of ways I had said it in the past, could you please remember that I am a human on the other side of the glass, on the other side of your phone, computer, whatever, and please give me a bit of time to rehab myself. I'm still going to be putting out content, but I'm going to try to schedule some breaks and things on my end as best that I can. I hope that even if there are people that still disagree with parts of this and what I've done, that you'll at least appreciate I am trying. Almost crying gave me heartburn. This is worse. This is everything's bad. Thank you all. I know it's weird. I am bad at this whole, this is another thing people point out, and this I kind of want to blame on the autism too, that there's just some stuff that takes over my mind as an aside, and I feel like I have to say it. Anyway, I want to say thank you to everybody who heard me out, especially thank you to those who have made it to the end of this video, which is where we are now. I hope there can be some understanding, and I hope things can move forward. I hope there can be, I hope that there can be a positive place for me in the world and a positive type of activism with me in it going forward. As I always say, fade to black.